Every man has his heroes, and every life is made up of stories. Heroic Stories is a series from heroicmen.org to find out why some men choose the harder path in life, even when it means losing everything, how they survived, and who they are today. These men seem heroic to us, even if they don't call themselves that. They seem to have an extra strength in their system, extra grit to battle doubt and find purpose. All of these men are seeking divine friendship with God, and they all believe in building up faith, building up men, and building up our future. Sponsored by CatholicSpeakers.com and hosted by Dominic from Heroic Men, get the mindsets, the scars, and the playbooks that these men have earned the hard way. Heroism isn't born, it's made, and these are their stories. Hi, men. Welcome back to Heroic Stories. I'm Dominic from Team Heroic Men, joined today by Jacob Niemeier. Hi, Jacob. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me on, Dominic.
A pleasure. You're a world traveler, adventurer, helping people with all kinds of things. Clean water is a big deal. You can see it on the cap. I'm interested to hear your story as a younger man on the show. Let's get right into it. What is a story of heroism that absolutely lights you up?
Man, there's so many. Let me just go with the one that honestly jumped right to my mind, and it's a story of Pier Giorgio Frassati, Saint Pier Giorgio
That's awesome.
Frassati, and I've always had a massive devotion to him, even before he was canonized as saint. So calling him a saint is still a little bit challenging for me because I was so used to calling him Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati for the longest time. But just his life overall in general is just such a model of, I think, especially for men and young men in the laity, so specifically, what that looks like to live a true Catholic faith rooted in the sacraments, service of others, and the good things of life, right? Recognizing that God has given us many gifts, and both each individually, right, but also in creation, and to be able to enjoy God's creation and revel in the joy of creation. And he's such a model for that. And I think particularly one story that just keeps coming to my mind with Pier Giorgio is he was a part of a lay group of young Catholics during a very tumultuous time in Italy. Folks don't know his story. He was born in the early 1900s. He lived between 1901 and 1925. Yes, he died at the young age of 24 years old. And he was a part of during his teenage years into his early 20s, a part of a group that was pushing back, a group of Catholics that was pushing back against the fascism that was spreading across Italy and kind of the rise of the Mussolini government and uprising. And they were pushing back, and one time they were doing a peaceful protest, and the powers that be deemed their Catholic presence to be unacceptable and were forcibly trying to quell and remove them from their, position where they were in front of, I believe it was some sort of government building, and they were praying a rosary and being extremely peaceful. And one of the police officers tried to shove one of his friends forcibly out of the way, and Pier Giorgio stepped in front of him and boldly stood there very strong and took that position of hero, right? In that moment, rooted in his Catholic faith, rooted in the truth that there are transcendent things that are arguably and immensely, not just arguably, but immensely more important than, the what the world believes to be the right and what the world believes to be, the powers that were heading in that direction, and staying strong on the truth, staying strong on the faith. And just one example of many of his life being bold and being courageous in a moment of a test, a moment of a situation of tension and trial, and standing up for the truth, even at the cost of his own safety and his own reputation as an elite in his, in the society where his father was a member of the elite in Turin, Italy. His father was the chief editor of the newspaper La Stampa. And so he had a lot to lose by taking that bold position, but he did it nonetheless because he's rooted in faith and rooted in the truth of Christ. So I think that's
fantastic.
That's a great example of heroism.
I'd never heard of that moment, that story. That's so cool. I also recently just learned that there's another moment where he's home with his family over dinner or something, and then some fascists come barreling in the front door, and now there's a fight, I guess, going on in the hallway, and this is a man's man, and he ends up chasing them off down the street, and they don't come back, and that actually kind of blows my mind. They don't come back and actually do round 2 on his house. Sounds like that moment in the protest, peaceful protest, there could have easily become a riot, or maybe it did for a bit. Or man, for somebody who did the amount of physical activity that he got up to, just from looking at him in the photos, you could sort of see a bit of an imposing guy under the suits and the big grin. Like, this is somebody who's got a healthy build. I don't think you want to be squaring off with him. Plus the power of God, that light in his eyes, I'm sure was there. Amazing. Why does Pier Giorgio somebody who inspires you so deeply? How did you hear about him? What is it about his life that so moves you?
I think he lived an integrated life. I think that's what's most attractive for me is living a truly integrated life, rightly ordered. Obviously, God first, family and friends second, and the rest falls into place accordingly, right? And I think especially the heart that he had for the poor and for serving the less fortunate was just so admirable, particularly from such a young age. I mean, another story about him, he was at home. I think he might even not even been a teenager at this point, probably still in his adolescent years. And a young mother, I believe, and her son came knocking on the door at their house, and they were clearly impoverished. And they were asking for, I think, some bread or something of that nature. Correct me, those that are watching can go look the story up themselves. I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but he gets up and goes and greets them at the door, and his family was having dinner. He got up from the dinner table and went to greet them, and because one of the butlers or servants at their house had answered the door, and Pierre heard the conversation and went over there. And 5 minutes go by, and he comes back to the dinner table, and his shoes are gone. And his father asks, Pierre, where are your shoes? He said, well, I gave them to the young boy. He had none. And his father said, well, why did you do that? He said, because he needed them more than I do. And just like that's just, like from such a young age, he was so in touch with how what we've been given is not for our own sake. It's to be as a gift to others. And his family, his parents were incredulous at it. They couldn't believe, like, what are you doing? Like, we give you all this stuff. Like, sure, give them some bread, but like we paid for those shoes. Those are nice shoes. They couldn't believe that their son had just given them away so freely, And I think that's what's so admirable about him, and among many, many things. But I think he understood very clearly that life was not about him. It was about being a gift to others, and what he had been given was not for his own sake, but for others. And I think that's such an incredible witness.
I agree. That's amazing. I'm curious to hear a little more of your story, because it sounds like that matters to you, what you just talked about. It matters to you because it's something that you're practicing or trying to do yourself with your own work and so on. So let's get into a little bit of that. I'll tee up the next question, which sort of opens that gate, which is, what was one of the most difficult decisions you ever had to make? And then how did you get through it?
Well, that's a perfect tee up. That I think probably to date, the most difficult decision I've had to make was to take a leap of faith and leave a comfortable, well-paying corporate America consulting engineering job with a lot of upward mobility and follow the Lord's calling that he had put on my heart to venture off into the unknown, if you will, in an entrepreneurial way, starting the nonprofit NGO at a relatively young age. I was in my late 20s when I took that leap. And I'll tell a kind of an anecdotal story here that I tell on occasions where it makes the most sense to share. But to highlight the challenge of that decision I made, leaving behind comfortable pay, comfortable, seemingly future life in that career. I had for about a year and a half before I went full time as the founder and executive director of Vera Aqua Vera Vita, which is the name of that organization that I started. I have been able to go part time as a consulting engineer. My company allowed this to happen, and that was key to the transition. I wasn't going recklessly into this next step. I was taking, cautious steps, but taking them with confidence and trust in God. And gratefully, my company was very supportive of that. I was able to go part-time for 15 months. I still got full-time benefits, which made the transition possible. But towards the end of that part-time period, when I was about to make that that full step into a full-time role at Vera Aqua Vera Vita as our executive director and lead behind the consulting engineering world, some of the leadership in my company came to me about a couple months before that, and they said, Jacob, are you sure you want to go? Are you sure? We have big plans for you. You'll be in an executive level, senior level leadership role in the next 5 to 10 years if you stay with. And that was very enticing, that comfortability, that well-paying job, knowing what that would mean for, my financial well-being and all those things. And it was kind of a moment of, it's kind of the last moment effort I feel from Lucifer, and also God allowing that to test me on how resolved I was to trust the Lord's way and trust the
Did you
calling.
have kids at the time? How
I
large
did
was your family?
I
No?
did not have kids, but I
Okay.
was on the cusp of being married. I was engaged and was going to be getting married later that year in September. And so that was also factoring into it as well. But I couldn't ignore the call. I knew that if I didn't take that chance and trust the Lord to go this route with Vera Aqua Vera Vita, that I would probably regret it, maybe the rest of my life. And I certainly felt this kind of deeper sense that I might not feel that level of fulfillment that I was, had been searching for much of my life with the work that I would do. Like I wanted to have a level of fulfillment knowing that I was doing something that truly mattered. And that was also something that gave me extra motivation to take that step, that I felt that was where I was going to find that fulfillment and become really who God created me to be and experience that greatness and human flourishing. Thinking of a quote by the late Pope Benedict the 16th, he said, "We were not created for comfort; we were created for greatness."
Hmm.
A big motivator for me.
Yeah. Could you help paint a little bit more of a picture for me of what life was like kind of before, such that you're looking at this choice and you're going, I don't want to have the regret of 5 years from now and not having done this thing that absolutely matters. And I want to talk about that thing, why it matters so deeply. But before that, like what was going on in your life? And it sounds like you were feeling pretty, I don't know, disillusioned, like you hit a ceiling, you wanted a lot more out of life. Like, why were you the kind of guy that wanted more out of life?
Because I was created for that. And I think this is something that I really love to tell people, is that we all have a unique mission in God's plan. If we don't do what God created us to do, no one will. Like that's how important we each and every one of us are in God's divine plan. And this was the Lord was calling me to go deeper in discovering that mission and begin that journey of actually living out that mission. And obviously that mission it actually does more than anything. It's not siloed to a career, to a vocation, to a particular, you know, step. It's transcendent of all those things, like our unique mission. And I think for me, that was the thing that was kind of always there. Like I had always felt that I was created to do something that truly mattered. Uh, and here's the thing. This was my calling, right? Everyone's is different. Everyone has a different calling. So being attentive to that comes through, obviously, first and foremost, reading ourselves in relationship with Jesus Christ, being attentive to the Holy Spirit, rooted in prayer, and knowing thyself, knowing the gifts, talents, strengths, weaknesses, even, or what I like to say as opportunities for improvement and virtue. Knowing all those things about ourselves gives us clarity of what God wants of us. And I think that's where I was. And it helped that I had the backdrop of encountering the poor and encountering the needy on a mission trip to Haiti when I was a student at Purdue. That was a part of that journey. Experiences are also formative in helping us
Mm.
discover where the Lord wants to lead us, right? And so for all those things, I kind of think that was really the foundation, really, if you will, the 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 fertile ground that the Lord could plant the seed of my unique mission that He wanted me to enter into.
So it sounds like that mission trip just opened a door that you couldn't walk away from. I'm curious, especially for the young men, or even the dads with the sons or something who are listening to this show. You talked about having a sense of awareness that you have a call, knowing that you're created for a mission. How were you able, or what was going on, or what did you do to discern the fact that that was actually going on, and it wasn't just shiny object syndrome? You're
or
just dissatisfied by life, you just want more. And not well. How were you? What was going on? How were you? Did you tell the difference between them?
Yeah, gratefully, I understood even from a relatively young age, probably I would say even back to when I was an adolescent, that the real test of whether something is from God or from myself, or even if we want to go so far as to say from the evil one, the fruit that it bears, right? Does it bear peace? Does it bear joy? Does it bear a satisfaction in spite of, and oftentimes even because of, trials and sufferings that are going to be a part of it, right? Is it bearing good fruit or is it bearing bad fruit? And then I think secondarily learned a bit later in my life, especially on that mission trip to Haiti, is it about others or is it about myself? Right? Because God is always about other. Like he's unconditionally about others. And if we're called to be like God, then our life would have to, it needs to reflect that. And that's where we discover true human flourishing, right?
Sounds like your faith has been a big deal for you throughout most of your life, from
Yes,
early on as well.
yes, 100%. I don't know how deep you want to go on that tangent, but I
Yeah,
remember very
let's do
vividly
it.
when I was a kid, probably 6 or 7, I used to have a lot of nightmares. I'd wake up in the
Really?
middle of the night. And actually now, reflecting back on that, I'm going through a bit of that journey with my own children, particularly my oldest son right now. He tends to have nightmares as well. And reflecting back on, when I was a kid, how those affected me, it made me very uneasy and anxious, made it hard for me to obviously fall back to sleep in the middle of the night. And for a period of time, I just was really grappling with those nightmares. I wake up in the middle of the night in like cold sweats, and my parents, particularly my mother, would do her best to calm me down and comfort me in the middle of the night to help me get back to sleep. But I really remember very vividly a turning point in that journey and experience of like, how do I grapple with these nightmares, and when they come upon me in the middle of the night, and how do I find a place to come back to peace and be able to fall back to sleep. My mom at one point, probably out of exasperation of them happening so frequently, maybe it was at her wits ends, and my mom had faith for sure at the time, but she said something very profound. She said, Jacob, when you wake up in those nightmares, like, give them to God, like, just pray, say, Jesus, come, bring me peace. And I began to do that, and I began to see the fruits, like, almost immediately. Like the nightmares didn't affect me as much, and then they went away altogether, right? And that was just a very, from a very young age, a very evident intercession of our Lord into my life
Mhm.
to bring grace and peace, and that really established a really solid foundation of faith for me.
Amazing. And so then you went on to travel. I mean, it seems like that was a not a training ground, but like proving ground to set up how you chose to handle even bigger problems moving into the rest of your mission in life. When did it become obvious to you, or why did it become obvious that this was something? Like, lots of people go on mission trips and they come back and then they don't do what you do? What happened during that mission trip where you were so convicted or inspired?
Well, the backdrop of that trip to Haiti when I was a student at Purdue was in 2011. I was studying environmental and natural resources engineering at Purdue, the focus on water. And I went on the Catholic student trip over the Christmas break of my junior year. And it was a year after the devastating 2010 earthquake. And we land in Port-au-Prince, and the Catholic Student Center at Purdue had been sending Catholic missions down to Haiti for years, but 15 years or so at that point. Had a very well established relationship with a sister parish in a community called Baudin out in the kind of up in the highlands of the island of Haiti in the mountains. And we were there going that year in a unique capacity with our student team to rebuild from the devastation of the earthquake. We were going to rebuild a school and a library in that town of Baudin, and we land in Port-au-Prince. We get picked up at the airport, and we're driving through the city, and we get to the outskirts of Port-au-Prince, and on one side of this canal that was on the outskirts of the city is downtown Port-au-Prince, mostly still in ruins as far as I could tell. It's still vivid in my mind. Arguably no redevelopment or rebuilding had really begun. A year later, bear in mind. And then on the other side of the canal is a big blue UN tent camp as far as the eye could see. Most people were still that had been displaced by the earthquake were still living in these UN tents that were emergency. It's supposed to be for emergency purposes, but they're basically making them their homes now. And I remember seeing this woman carrying a 5-gallon bucket walk out of her tent, walk down to the canal right there at the outskirts of the city, fill that 5-gallon bucket up with water, and walk back to her tent. And I'm not joking you, Dominic, when I say it. This water looked like chocolate milk, smelled like raw sewage, had trash floating in it, animals defecating in it, upstream people are washing their clothes and their dishes in it. Right next to it's their version of a landfill, a trash heap on fire. Now, gratefully, it was the middle of the day and I didn't see anybody mooning me, but I imagine people were probably also going to the bathroom near it, if not in it. And it was shocking to me. And I asked our translator, I had this background in water engineering, so I maybe had a little bit of a different lens to look at this problem than my fellow missionaries did. And it just really struck me. It really hit me. The Lord kind of opened my eyes and he made me realize this seems wrong. What's going on here? So I asked my translator just to make sure, are they drinking this water? Surely they're not drinking this water. And he said, yeah, of course they are. What choice do they have? And I just couldn't believe it. I was like, are you kidding me? What? Huh? I knew that water was going to get them sick and cause chronic issues, if not kill them. I mean, it was so evident, and I just couldn't believe it. I had no idea that that was a reality for these people. Growing up in the US here, we have all the luxuries we can possibly imagine. We don't even realize how blessed we are. I mean, even the homeless, even the poor here have clean water and proper sanitation systems. They can go into a bathroom if they're homeless and get wash their hands and have water on demand and get clean water to drink and sit on a toilet, flush the toilet. You don't have to think twice about it. And I realized that was my first exposure to that's not life for half of the world. Then I began to discover what.
How old were you at the time? I think you said early 20s.
Yeah, I was in my early 20s. Yeah, and probably almost 21 years old. No, actually, I was already 21. I turned 21 after my sophomore year, so I was 21 already. Yeah, it was just eye opening, and the Lord kind of he really smacked me over the head. He said, "Wake up, Jacob. You could do something about this to help these people." And that was the beginning of the call.
Amazing. So tell us a little bit about what you've gone on to do with your mission, with your life. Tell us about your ministry and your mission.
Yeah. So, well, I think a good point to start from with that question there is that coming back from that trip to Haiti, I realized I need to learn more about this problem that I encountered. What is this? And I came to discover there's something called the global water crisis. And I learned many of the facts. The reality, here's a few of them. 4 billion people, according to multiple academic peer-reviewed studies, lack access to clean water. That's 1/2 of the world's population. Every 90 seconds to 2 minutes, a child under the age of 5 is dying from a waterborne disease somewhere in the world. This is a pro-life issue. And those facts, plus coming back from that trip, I dropped an engineering elective coming back from that trip and picked up a entrepreneurship class. And that began further the journey for me of the Lord calling me and solidifying and making that call more clear for me that I am called to start my own organization to do something about this. And that was kind of that first seed. Right after that trip, I also realized I want to go do something more explicitly related to water in a developing country. So I found out about a team of folks putting together a water research project to go to Togo, Africa that following summer. So that would have been the summer between my junior and senior year. And I decided to throw my name in the hat. I said, I want to go. And we put together the full team, got it funded, and we went to Togo, Africa for 3 weeks that following summer and did a water research project. And that really solidified that path. And then I really knew that after I graduated, I wanted to get some real world consulting, technical engineering experience, get my professional engineering license so I can get that real world engineering knowledge and also get that legitimate licensure to, make what we're going to do eventually with the organization that I did eventually start in June of 2017, with more legitimate, more credible. And so I graduated in 2012, and then 5 years later, we incorporated Vera Aqua Vera Vita. And since then, we've been able to bring clean water to over 8,500 people in Peru, not in Haiti. And there's a whole another part of the journey there that led us to Peru. We've been able to bring wastewater solutions to 7,000 people. Our care package program has reached 5,000 plus across 4 communities. Our education workshop has impacted 10,000 plus across 5 communities. We've just been blessed by the Lord to get to this point where we can serve people and bring about transformation in their life through clean water and an encounter with the living water of Jesus Christ, because we can't disconnect the two. And all that's been a part of the journey, is along the way uncovering that it's about more than just meeting a physical need. It's about helping people truly flourish. And that kind of comes back to my own unique mission, right? I've come to discover that my unique mission is to speak truth, to inspire transformation, and to empower people to be in service of others. And that mission is meant to be lived out in every vocation, every aspect, every part of my life. It's meant to inform the decisions that I make, the way that I choose to operate in the world, and is ultimately meant to be a reflection of God's glory. Because when we're doing what we're created to do, we can set the world on fire, as St. Catherine of Siena. I humbly believe that the work we're doing with Vera Aqua Vera Vita is a means of truly living that out in service of those that are also meant, our less fortunate brothers and sisters are also meant to live that same life of human flourishing, greatness, but they can't begin to think about those things and begin to dream about what their life could look like until we can meet those basic needs for them and set them on a trajectory of change out of their poverty.
It's so true. I was just chatting with a friend yesterday, and we were talking about difficulty with, where are the men, right? In modern culture, we look around, no, there's so few men taking heroic action at all, but really doing anything, stepping up or doing anything. And I think a massive problem, right, is we don't know what to do. It's because, we men love to go to work solving problems, right? It sounds like you've got this fantastic single focus, like we're going to solve this problem, come hell or high water. We're going to do what it takes. And then, of course, the more you fix this problem, it leads to other problems to keep fixing. And it's like, hooray, we got missions for miles to just keep going to work. But a lot of men they can't see, either they can't see anything, or they've not been given a story, or they've not been told all of the things that need fixing or need help. And so we're stuck. We sit at home, we're potatoes, stuck in a basement, show up to church, get my sacraments, go back home, do nothing, and life feels meaningless. And, nobody's calling you or challenging you to do, well, anything, not even anything greater, just like anything. And we don't know what we're supposed to go to work doing. And so this massive part of what it means to be a man never gets to be activated or switched on. It seems like you had that experience too,
Right.
that did that, for you. Where does your mind go with that? Like this sense of calling people, especially men, that's what this show's about, to a greater story. Men are uniquely gifted to solve challenges and problems. And I think you're somebody who's leaned into that. You found purpose in that. And it's exhausting. I'm sure it's burning you out at times, but it's also motivating. Where does your mind go with that?
I keep thinking of a phrase, Latin, quo vadis. Where are you going? I think our world in general, and especially men, have lost direction, as you just so comprehensively described. We've lost direction because we've forgotten our destination. And our destination ultimately is heaven, right? That's where we're destined to be. That's what we were created for. But here's the reality. It's not supposed to be something that happens upon our death. Christ is very clear. We are called to create the kingdom of heaven now and here. So the destination is now. The time is ripe. And I think to your point, I actually would argue that the deeper underlying problem that men really have is that it's not that they don't see problems that they can go solve. It's not that they don't, see the world's, plight and realize that there's so much that needs to be done. It's that they don't know what to do. Why do they not know what to do? It's because they haven't done the work of discovering their mission and recognizing that they are utterly important. Men have forgotten. They have not been told enough. And this is true for all humanity, men and women, but I think especially for men in today's culture, we have been told that what we do and who we are doesn't matter.
Mhm.
But nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, that's just a straight lie from the pit of hell. And even in a general sense, that's true, but even more profoundly in a personal sense, is it true that what we do actually does matter and who we are actually does matter? That if Dominic de Souza doesn't do what God created him to do, no one else will. You are so important. The world needs you. Like, we've forgotten to tell that to each other. We've forgotten that ourselves. And I think that's the real core problem. Because once you know that, then you can discover your mission. Then you can discover how you're called to live that in the world. And there are a boatload of problems that you can then go solve with that. There's no, there's really arguably no limit to the number of problems that men can get out there and do something about. But we're not motivated to do it until we realize how important we are.
How do you, if you were to list a couple of things to recommend, especially let's say to young men, to discover, as you say, discover their mission, what would be some things you'd encourage them to do?
As far as reading, books, podcasts, what are we talking about here explicitly, or all of the above?
Anything. You decide.
Okay.
You're looking out at a room of young men, you go, you all matter. And they're like, yeah, but I don't know what to do about that, bro. Where would you go?
Well, I'm a part of an organization called the Authentic Leadership Foundation, among the many things that I'm involved in. But it's one organization I believe profoundly in their mission, and
Okay.
we really have three core pillars of our organization that we are founded on. First, principled decision making. We have to be able to make better decisions because oftentimes it's bad decisions that lead us to situations where we're then stuck in a corner or pigeonholed, or we are upside down, whether it be financially, mentally, spiritually, you name it, because we made bad decisions that now we have to call ourselves out, right? So we got to be able to make better decisions. The next pillar is character strength development, growth and virtue, recognizing that we each have core strengths and gifts that are part of the God-given temperament that he's given us that should inform us of some of what we have to offer the world, but also we also come with those temperaments that we have, our weaknesses, or as I like to call them, opportunities to grow in virtue, to have something very tangible to sink our teeth into. For instance, my temperament is sanguine choleric. Those that don't know what the temperaments are, go look them up. I'm very people oriented, but I'm about almost 50-50. I'm like 52% sanguine, 48% choleric. Choleric is like go getter, action oriented. It's kind of in my nature to be just naturally getting out there and getting after stuff, right? But what comes with that, one of the downsides is ego. And so I am knowing that, and we all have ego, but for me, it's sometimes extra heightened, knowing that that's an opportunity for me to actually grow in virtue, because that's a vice that I do more profoundly, if you will, or more heavily struggle with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so character strength development, growing in virtue. And then the third pillar is unique mission, discovering unique calling in the world and getting after that and living that, because there's so much joy. And I think that's the thing. There's the joy that comes from it. So I would say the Authentic Leadership Foundation is one thing I would recommend for men, especially young men that are maybe a little lost and wayward, don't know what that next step is. Check out the Authentic Leadership Foundation, go to the website, sign up for a course. I think the next one starts in August 14th, if I'm not mistaken. That's one area I would encourage. I also am a pretty big follower of Chris Stephanik's ministry, and I love his podcast. I find his message and the way he conveys the gospel and evangelizes to be so accessible, real life Catholic. And his big thing is joy. And I think, let's just kind of boil it down to the reality here. Like, we're all looking for fulfillment and happiness, but we're all usually looking in the wrong place. We're looking for, we pursue it in a fleeting way, and then we're constantly grasping for the next and the next. And I think there's something more profound in that deep joy that we have to get after. And I think so Christophonic's a good thing there for that. Books, I'm so busy these days, I don't get to read all that much as I'd like to. But recently I've been reading through slowly. It's more of a reflection type book, but it's The Way of St. James by Matthew Kelly, and just how we're called to be in control of our tongue, and how the tongue is not just a reflection of what's going on interiorly with us and the way we communicate, but also it informs what we say, also reinforces and informs the way we look at the world and our ideologies. And the tongue can be a great good, can be used for great good, to build people up, to encourage, to inspire, to motivate, but it can also be very destructive. And so we have to be very careful with our words and what we say, for both our own sake and for others. So those are, I guess, maybe 3 resources among many others I'm sure I could come up with if we have more time.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Thank you. Well, man, I just burned you out with a bunch of additional questions. So let me skip to the last one, and we'll close with this one. You've sort of kind of answered this a little bit, but we'll get a definitive, response from you. Who do you seek to be a hero for? Who do you put heroic effort into serving? And again, to be annoying, you can't say God or your family, because as a man, those are givens. So you're with your mission in life, who are you here to serve?
Poor.
Yeah.
Matthew 25, it's a cheat sheet, if you will, to salvation. Yeah. Whatever we did for the least of these, we did for Christ. And giving drink to the thirsty is a corporal work of mercy. And our life is not supposed to be about us. And it becomes very evident and clear when you're around the poor that that's the case. Like, my life is meant to be a gift, to others. And obviously that is applicable in every aspect of life. But it's become very clear for me that that's a place where at least all of us, literally all of us in some capacity, are called to be a hero. And we need to discern what that looks like, whether that be with the gift of our treasure, our prayers, our time, our talents, or all. But I think we can't be complacent and just say that's someone else's problem. And again, it goes back to, if everyone was doing what God created them to do, we would set the world on fire, right? And everybody's gifts, talents, strengths are meant to be in service of others, about others. And that at that intersection is where we discover how each of us are called to be a hero. So I guess as I'm saying that, I think I'm also maybe in some capacity, maybe called by God. And again, it's a humble calling that I would accept from him, but also to, I think, maybe be a hero to others, to realize they are created for that same fulfillment, greatness, joy that I've come to discover myself. And I'm not saying I live it perfectly and that there aren't hard days, but gosh darn, it's a meaningful life when you make your life about other people.
Thanks for joining us. If this story connected with you, send it to someone. And if you want to chat with us about anything that we've said, send us a message at heroicmen.org/stories. Our partner at CatholicSpeakers.com has built the easiest way to book powerful Catholic speakers for your men's event. They are the #1 resource worldwide for event organizers and Catholic speakers. Book easily, confidently, and ask for several grants to support ministry to men. Visit heroicmen.org/speakers today. Come and share your journey in the Heroic Brotherhood, our online community for Catholic men like you. Get the app with the best Catholic media for men, including Heroic Men's original series, Be a Man. It's all free, because an alliance of donors already paid it forward for you. Stand with us. Let's build the future of Catholic men. Will you pay it forward? $5 a month pays it forward for 5 men. Visit Heroic Men to stand with us. Because men like us, we leave no man behind. Visit heroicmen.org today.